Are we starting?
It's recording, but this is all just going to get edited out. I just have it recording right now for the double clap so that I can sync the audio and the video later, and then I'll do the little introduction right now. Welcome to the Untitled podcast. Make sure you leave your ego and your titles at the door. Today we have a special guest. Before we get there, a word from our sponsors. Today's podcast is brought to you by Spandex. Without it, none of my clothes would fit. Special guest, as you can see, Jesse Quiroz. I'm going to do a little introduction for Jesse here and tell you a little bit about him and why I wanted to have him on the podcast. So first off, he's awesome, but Jesse is the pastor of Journey Church here in Troy, Missouri. He was one of my first clients when I came out here and started doing my weight loss stuff. And he was one of the first people to take a chance on me and let me work with him. And we've had our ups and downs with that. But overall, I'd say it's been an awesome progress to just get through those ups and downs. He's the youngest grandpa I've ever met in my entire life, which is pretty cool. And I call him the Bible Ninja. He is, I guess you could say he's my mentor, but I'm more submitting to him when it comes to the Bible and things like that, because I never really learned how to read the Bible from anybody. I never really learned how to have a relationship with God, and he's kind of taken me under his wing and shown me favor, and I'm beyond blessed to have that favor. So wherever you are, stop everything that you're doing, stand up, and give him a round of applause. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, everybody.
All right, so let's go ahead and start this off with this easy question. What's your least favorite book of the Bible? I'm just kidding. You don't have to answer that.
Revelation.
Really?
Yeah, because and it's so hard to call anything least favorite, especially when you have a worldview of inerrancy and full inspiration. But I loathe the division that book, that people's perceptions about that book have caused. I mean, we've seen people just go to war over how it's supposed to all unfold. And it's just so symbolic. It's so mysterious. So it makes my mind work more than anything else. That's why I throw that one out there.
Dude, I remember that was one of the first things that we actually sat down and talked about was the idea of heaven and like what exactly that was. Because for me, I wasn't too caught up with the idea of heaven in the first place. And I'm like, Jesse, what is this? And you had done a whole sermon series about it, and I had listened through it, and we sat down and talked. But dude, there's some weird stuff in there. And like, I don't understand how maybe over 2,000 years of people reading it over and over and over, but it's like, how do people actually come to conclusions of what some of that stuff means? Because it's so symbolic. It honestly sounds like John found some magic mushrooms on that island and ate them and was like,
what is this dude seeing?
That's when I hear people talk about them experimenting with psychedelics, it sounds like the Book of Revelation.
You want to go have the Book of Revelation, just dig in. I think it is so symbolic. At the same time, there's parts of it that are so specific. Like when you're talking about heaven and the New Jerusalem, which is just the main capital city in heaven, which I don't think people think about that. They're not describing heaven. They're just describing the city. This one part of this whole other celestial universe that's going to exist for us. And he measures it. And the city measures to be about the size of the United States, but it says that it's as tall as it is long and wide. And so I'm like, all right, put the United States this way. How big is that? I've never, the highest skyscraper I think I've ever been was the Empire State Building, at the top, and you just kind of stand out over that glass and you look down, or Willis Tower now, as I think it is in Chicago, not Sears Tower like it was.
Oh, did they rename that?
Dude, they renamed it. Because I was like, where's the Sears Tower? You're looking for it in Google. Can't find it. But it's Willis Tower.
Willis was a racist.
So
Willis
now-
got canceled.
But you go up there and you look down and you're like, man, what am I, 110 floors up?
Yeah.
How
something like
big are
that.
these buildings in the New Jerusalem if it's as tall as what 2,000, 1,400 miles?
Yeah.
Like, think about that for a second. Like, so why is he being that specific? Heaven has got to be huge. And then you think about how big our universe. What is this? My Trump hands.
It's going to be huge.
It's going to be huge.
A new heaven. It's going to be huge. I'm building
wonderful.
it. Trump Tower. God's going to be on the top floor.
There's some people that believe that. But nonetheless, like, how big our universe is, right? If the earth is just a speck of sand in the vast creation of this huge, ever expanding, what is heaven like? And how big is that in this? So I understand like one city being that big when you kind of look at the perspective of how big this new world's going to be. So I don't know. I love to think about that. It's impossible for the human mind to imagine, but I do get excited about it. So that's why I like talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of fun talking about things that really are outside of our understanding.
Dude.
In all reality, we understand very little about what it means to be human, what it means to even exist, like what life is. We look out, like you were just saying with the universe, you look out, and when you really actually think about it, it's quite sobering to think how small you are in this vast cosmos that exists, and then that you actually have meaning amongst all of that, like that your life has purpose and meaning floating on, if you were to really think about it, a piece of sand on the beach of out there just floating in outer space. And here we are with consciousness trying to figure it out. It's crazy.
Yeah. The value of life, the reality of life, how to understand it.
Yeah.
Are we going to tackle that?
We can. I mean,
I don't think we will do a good job.
We're going to solve it. We're going to solve the meaning of life in this.
Just share this
in this podcast.
Yeah. Hashtag meaning of life. It'll spread.
So now that we've got the meaning of life figured out, actually to stay kind of on the weird, like things, and just so people know, this isn't going to be all about the Bible stuff, but it's hard not to talk about it with Jesse because it's just kind of what we do. And it just flows really easy.
Yeah.
But the other day I was reading the book of 1 Samuel, and you get into chapter 7, 8, and 9, where the Ark of the Covenant is taken. They take the Ark of the Covenant off to their lands. Actually, maybe that's 5, 6, and 7. And then 8, 9 is kind of where it all starts to fall apart for Samuel with his kids and whatnot. But, and I'm reading the description of like what is happening to these people. And it literally sounds like these people are being exposed to massive amounts of radioactivity. And I literally wrote in my Bible, Ark of Covenant, radioactive ? Because like I'm always trying to understand things, and we're always trying to understand things through like our perspective, our mindset of what it is, because that's what we try to do. We try to make everything real and human and at least understandable within our brains. But I don't know, there's just so many weird things that as I come across stuff in the Bible, it used to really bother me. And the more that I read, I'm just like, that's an interesting thing. I'm going to set that aside in my question box for now, but I'm not going to worry about it as much anymore.
Yeah.
The question box is getting pretty full.
It's filled. Yeah. I've got about 4 of them now because there's so many.
I think when you stop asking questions is when it's really hard to stay in it. Like you got to have those questions. You got to stay curious about things. And it's not just the Bible. It's about life in general. You got to stay curious about things. You got to try to learn. But at a certain point, you have to accept that, hey, maybe I just can't understand this.
At the same time, don't you think it's so, what's the word I'm looking for? Just comforting to know that somebody else in the faith has a bunch of questions too.
Oh, yeah.
Because that used to not be the norm, that you could be welcome to ask questions. And so like for you to know that, hey, there's a pastor that has 4 boxes full of questions. He probably got more than I do. Like, what does that tell you?
Honestly, it helps me a lot because for the longest time, and I don't know, there's probably lots of people out there and hopefully some of them listening to this podcast, that you grew up and you weren't really allowed to ask questions, or you often got because I said so, or that's just what it says, or because it's in the Bible, or because you're going to hell if you don't.
Yep. Serious answers that we're told.
Yeah. And like when you actually get the chance to sit down with somebody and ask these questions, and their answer is, I'm really not 100% sure, but let's look at it and see what we can find out. And I think we've done that on a few different topics. And often I find out it's a lot more simple than it appears to be. But at a certain point, that's where the big F word kicks in, faith, where you have to just kind of say, I'm going to chalk this one up to faith and go, I don't have to 100% understand, but I can believe based on the evidence I see.
That's true. Having faith to know that I might not have the answer now.
Yeah.
And I might not have the answer now in this life, but more than likely, like you said, I don't know how long that took you to get to that answer that we were even talking about, just on like how the Holy Spirit expresses himself in the gifts of the Spirit, all that stuff. What's the doctrine of the baptism? Like, things that we've all had questions. I don't know. Would you say 2 decades that you have had that question, asked that question, that it took you to get to that point where you kind of have a better understanding or a satisfied understanding of it that doesn't make those questions itch so much?
Yeah. I grew up in a denomination that didn't really talk about that part of the Bible.
That's a cuss word right there.
Yeah,
it's Pentecost.
Yeah, like, hey,
we don't say that here. Yeah, I understand.
Those are the people that get ushered out, and security takes a picture of him and says, "Don't let this guy back in. Yeah. He thinks the Holy Spirit's doing things."
Charisma magazine was the hustler, in the
So when you actually dive into one of these things, and there's almost like this, don't talk about it. We just don't talk about it. And we're going to use 2 verses to basically stand firm in something and we're going to ignore everything else. And I think that's really the biggest disservice that Christians do for non-Christians in the world, is that they stand firm on these small issues or small verses, and they make them out to be these doctrinal things that people think that the whole entire Christian experience is built on. And even within the church, like, that is something I experienced, that like, I didn't want to be part of the church for such a long time because I saw church people and I didn't like church people. And I thought, why would I want a relationship with God if that's what I'm going to end up like? And then when you actually get to experience what it's like to have a relationship on your own, it's a lot different. It's a lot different than what everybody tells you it's going to be. And it's taken me 2 or 3 different churches, and it's taken me walking away from it and coming back to it a few times, God in general, because there were certain questions that I would ask and I couldn't find an answer to them, and no one would help me find an answer to it. Or no one had just taught me like, hey, dude, you need to start a box that you can put these questions in and
that's
just
so good.
Set them to the side for a little while. Like you kind of really, you put it and you said, hey, it's not a salvation issue. Like certain things, it's not going to affect salvation. So don't worry about it too much. And that really got me thinking, like, man, why am I majoring in the minors here?
Do you think the reason, because I use that phrase too, but I've had to check myself, is that people wouldn't give you the answers. And I think it's almost they couldn't they don't admit. And I think the name of it's ignorance.
Or maybe even pride, like that they don't want to admit that they don't have the freaking answer.
Oh my goodness. That's absolutely part of this problem, is pride and ego, admission of weakness, that we are not the center of the universe. He is. I don't know all things. Like, why is that we don't want to admit that we don't know something? I don't know. That's just a very interesting thing, but it creates commonality though. Like we just talked about, when you find out that I got 4 boxes of questions that creates a connection. It's almost an attraction, like a magnet to metal between two people. And I think ego does nothing but separate. Humility in that way does nothing but connect. And so I really put, pride in that category, like the Bible talks about. It's the greatest sin because it's really the original sin. It's the sin that, scripturally through our worldview is what caused Satan, Lucifer, to separate himself from God. And I think it's by nature a sin that separates people relationally, and it is alive and active in the world and more in the church probably than I see it anywhere else. And this is just one of those expressions of that. But getting to the solution of it though, right? Like we could easily just say it's ignorance. People are ignorant of these answers to the questions that we have. And instead of saying, I don't know, let's go find out, it's because God said so, like you were talking about, just believe it, just have faith, to like some serious questions about the Bible. I think the root of that would have to go all the way back from pre-Martin Luther, when the Roman Catholic Church separated the word of God from the people. And it just really became a big I told you so game. Yeah. And I think that carries residual effects. Like even though we got Luther and the 95 Theses and the word of God was returned to the people, you're still trying to catch up on study and understanding and context because you're losing a big gap of what was happening there. And so I don't think a lot of people know how to even read the word of God in a way that gets us to understand it, which obviously is the Holy Spirit, but also there's an educational approach of hermeneutics, which is a word that most people don't know.
What does it mean for the people who don't know?
Hermeneutics is just a fancy word that means interpreting scripture. Exegesis, people don't know what that word means, which means pulling a scripture out, looking at context, looking at who said it, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, the how. Yeah. But how do you find to the average believer, how do you find that? So we go to Google, which is cool. We should be thankful for any effort to try and understand it. But then you got a melting pot of just opinion there. And so it's who. So I think if we would get to a place where we would help people understand how to do it, not just serve them the fish, but teach them to fish in this context. And it begins with this. Step one is, hey, I got a bunch of questions. So do I. Let's get together and let's find out. And you and I have done that on a few different issues, and it's created answers.
Yeah. And it's created peace because life's chaotic enough and crazy enough as it is. And the last thing you need to be worrying about is should I have long hair or short hair? What is, my church said that if you have long hair, it's a shame for a man to have long hair. And if you have tattoos, you're going to hell. It's like, and I just really had to think about it and go,
well, you were going straight to hell. If that's true. Look at those knees. Come on.
Yeah. It's like, if I'm pretty sure God can handle that. Like if the dude can handle a man after his own heart, sleeping with a guy's wife, getting her pregnant, sending him out to war and killing him, and that's still a man after his own heart, I'm pretty sure he can forgive a tattoo.
He can't work around that one, bro. You got it. That's game changing.
Yeah, it is. Crocs and tattoos. If it's not the tattoos, I'm going to hell for the Crocs. Oh man. But yeah,
dude, Crocs are back in. Can we just speak to that?
Did you know that Crocs were made as a joke for the movie Idiocracy?
Are you being serious?
I'm being 100% serious. When the writers of Idiocracy were trying to come up with some of the stuff, the whole idea of Idiocracy is that these people get frozen in time as an experiment. They forget.
Wow.
1,000 years go by and they're in the future and everyone's gotten super dumb. Well, everyone being as dumb as they are, they have one shoe for everybody because too many things were happening with shoes. So it was all Crocs. So if you go back and watch that movie, everybody's wearing Crocs in the movie.
I don't know what to say to that right now. My mind is blown.
Yeah. This is the shoe of dumb people in the future.
I love the origin story of that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a way bigger issue than just Bible stuff, though. In all reality, like it's the whole idea of us feeling like we need to have all the answers in order to do anything, and that's somewhere where that I got stuck quite often in life. Is like I feel like I can't move forward until I know what to do or how to move forward, and that's brutal because then you're just paralyzed. It's analysis paralysis constantly. And we're not doing ourselves any favors by continuing to like live in those patterns, and getting out of those patterns is really hard if you don't have somebody to bounce stuff off of that's trustworthy and be like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Cool. I'm struggling with it too. Let's talk about it. And then once you realize you're not alone, you realize, man, this really isn't that big of a deal. And it's not just Bible stuff. It's a lot of things in life, and getting to it, getting to that sort of place. And I know that as much as we talk about Bible stuff, it all really floats on over into real life stuff. Like the whole reason that I struggle with it is because I'm trying to figure out how to live my real life. And then is it even that important for life?
There's that. I know we're not talking about all Bible, but Genesis chapter 2 and verse 18.
Go ahead and get out your word.
Come on, get it out. KJV.
Let's all stand while we read the word.
Let's all stand as we read together the word of God. It says in the very beginning when God created man, and I shared this past Sunday, that God is looking at Adam and he goes, it is not good that man should be alone.
Yeah.
And this is before Eve comes on the scene. And I remember the tension I had when I first read that verse, because I'm like, he's not alone. Like, God, he has you. Like, this dude is walking and talking with you in the Garden of Eden. Like, you can still smell the fresh paint on the walls of this is a new scene. And you are living life with the one who made you, walking with him, talking. He's not closing his eyes, imagining what he looks like we do. He's not, having to get into a silent space to just hear him speak to his thoughts like we do, and have to wonder, is that God or is that not? Because the human mind thinks 70,000 thoughts a day. So which one's his voice, which one's not?
Only 70,000?
Yeah, it depends on who you are. Average. So that's crazy. So somebody's 140 and somebody's probably 1,000.
Not to hate on Missouri, but the average here is 52,000.
No way, dude. Missouri, we are at least 53. But, you're getting there to this point where I'm like, it's not good. First off, this is perfection. So the fact that God would say this is not good is weird to me, and he's not alone. And so there had to have been this void that he's seeing in Adam that needs to be filled with more than just him. And so he creates Eve. He creates a helper. And I don't want us to think about this in a marriage context. He has somebody else to live life with and connect life with. So I think that's how we were made. To like live life, share life, and connect with each other. And to me, that's what creates that camaraderie, is if we can share the commonalities that we have. I remember I did a sermon series a few years ago. It's probably, if you asked our church who was there, it was probably the most impacting series we've ever done, called Confessions of a Pastor, where like I talked about how I struggle with anxiety, how I've struggled with depression, how I've struggled with ego, how I've struggled with insecurity, and just not even really digging into too much scripture on why I have these struggles. It's just, we have these struggles. And man, I'll tell you, there were so many people that came up to me after that being like, me too. I can't tell you how happy I am to know I'm not alone. Yeah. Because to your point, when we think we're the only one that's struggling with this, you can get real dark real quick. But if you got knowledge that somebody, even if it's somebody you greatly respect, struggles with it, like, it creates a commonality, a connection, makes that relationship stronger, but it feeds me big. And so like, you even walking me through my weight loss journey, which you walked through me with, like, what I love about you is you don't act, even though you know a lot, you don't act like you know it all. And so there are things that you're like, let me figure this out with you. And then you sharing struggles that you have, because I think we put people like you up on these pedestals that have the stories of weight loss that you have. And we're like, dude, I don't know if I could ever get there. And you'd be like, no, here's my struggles still to this day.
Yeah.
Then that keeps me going. So I think at the end of the day, it's just keeping people connected. And that, becomes a theme of that is confession and admission and weakness and humility and sharing each other's struggles.
Yeah. I mean, that's really like the whole idea behind wanting to sit down and have these conversations with people, is to put ourselves in those vulnerable moments again, because like you said, this life isn't meant to be lived alone, regardless of whether you subscribe to the teachings of the Bible or anything else.
Right.
You have to admit that we're a community of people, and that's been a huge breakdown in our culture and society. Like, especially American culture is like, we are so divided on everything. Like, everyone feels like I have to have an opinion and I have to be right about it. And that creates division, and vulnerability says, hey, let me just talk to you about what I'm really thinking, what I'm really feeling, and let's sit down and talk about it. And when you're vulnerable with people, you realize that you're not that different. The things that you think, the things that you believe, you have a lot more common ground, because we're all human and we're all doing this. And like, that is something that you did that it's unheard of, especially amongst pastors, is to get up there and say, I struggle with this. I don't have all the answers, because the whole idea of these people coming and listening to you is that you're the authority on the Bible that they're submitting to. And yeah, like, I try to tell people that I don't have all the answers, because I don't have all the answers. Like, I have a pretty good idea on how weight loss works. I have a pretty good idea on how exercise works, but I still struggle with the same things that I struggled with.
So good.
On day one, I just have better ways of handling them. It's like, when you get saved, or when you try to make a change, when you try to do anything in life, it's not like, okay, I made this decision, cured, I'm better. Dude, you get saved, you still want to go look at porn. You still want to go out and drink and do drugs. You still want to go do those things. You just have something inside of you that's kind of like telling you, hey, you shouldn't do that, because
so good.
It's going to prevent me from blessing you in another way. And I need you to walk this path so I can continue to put blessings in front of you for you to go after. And it's like, with life and with weight loss, with any of these things, with any sort of change, you have to commit to those things long term, and you have to be vulnerable with yourself and with somebody, preferably like have some community when you're walking through these difficult things. Because I mean, in all reality, God knew that we were jacked up from the beginning. Right. And you say that quite often, that we're all jacked up people, but it's like, he knew we were jacked up, and he's like, hey, this guy, he's going to get himself into some problems. I should give him a friend. Right. Because he's going to screw this up.
That's so good, man.
And when you get a couple of people, when you get people around you that like, you don't really have to know that much more than somebody to teach somebody. And I learned that by watching a 2.5-year-old teach a 2-year-old things. Like in daycare, watching a little kid teach my son, Teddy, something. It's like, you don't have to know much more. You just have to know a little bit more than somebody. And with you, like, a significant amount more in an area that I am trying to know more about. But at the same time, like, we still can have these conversations as if these things are like, they're fresh, they're new, because we're putting our human experience on it. Life is just really crazy. And if you don't have a core group of people around you, it's going to be even harder. It's going to be even crazier. And a lot of us don't have people around us that we can trust and talk to about these things, because people aren't vulnerable enough to just say, like,
vulnerability.
Yeah. Like, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, and trust that the person sitting across from them isn't going to treat them differently for that. Yeah. And just be like, hey, dude, it's cool.
Why is vulnerability so important? It's to me, because people don't do what they hear. They do what they see.
Yeah.
And if you want somebody to get to a place of victory or accomplishment, they need to see that in somebody. And in order to see that in somebody, you've also got to see because nobody gets there perfect. You didn't get to your weight loss goals like perfectly. I didn't get to where I'm on my way there, and it's not a perfect journey. But we don't show them those things. And I wish we would just see the power that vulnerability has to victories. And man, I think that there's just a force, again, I call it the devil, that's behind it all, just trying to keep us all disconnected. And you see that more than anything today. So I've never strived to be more vulnerable today. And I'm thankful for that. You know, I hate it when people, and not that I'm hating what you just did, but when people say that, I hate it when people tell me like, this guy knows so much. Like this guy has so much knowledge.
Yeah.
It's that Jerry Seinfeld thing. You ever hear? I think it was
it's got to be a
podcast guy who opened for him back in the day. But anyway, he was saying that he just was like, this is the greatest comedian. He's like introducing him that you've ever heard in your life. Jerry Seinfeld. And then Jerry Seinfeld just cussed him out after that show. Like, don't you ever say that. Because I think when we create these accolades, it creates a distance. And he knew that psychology and comedy. And I always say that, like, I don't like, man, this guy knows so much, because I think more than a teacher, and I think this would apply to you even as you're a life coach for many people, like more than a teacher, I'm a student.
Yes.
And I always have to be a student. And I'm just sharing what I've learned so far, but come with me in this journey.
Well, the best teachers are still students. Like,
that's it. When you stop being a student, are you really a teacher?
It's kind of like the same thing when you stop asking questions, when you stop learning, when you stop trying to do something, that's when things really start to fall apart. Like, I don't know if the camera can actually see that on the wall. It says, do not hide unwanted things in the fog. And I have these rules up all over my house, all 12 of the rules.
By who? Come on, say it.
Jordan Peterson's second book, 12 Rules for Life.
Legend.
Yeah. And the rules to some don't make sense. And they're not all like the easiest things to follow, but it's just, there's something like that. Like, do not hide unwanted things in the fog. It's like the idea of if there are things in your life that you don't really like, don't sweep them under the rug, do something about them.
So good.
It's so much easier to sweep things under the rug in life. It's so much easier to be like, this is hard. I'm not going to do it. Like, I don't want to. And like, that's what I did for the longest time with my weight. I just said, it's too hard. I don't want to do it. And then that's the truth behind it. But what it manifests itself as, the words that come out of your mouth is, I'm big boned. I have genetic issues. I don't have time. I'm tired. I'm busy. I have a kid. Like, there's nowhere to eat around me. Like, we come up with all the excuses when in all reality, it's, I don't believe in myself.
Oh, I just said 5 of those things last week. So it's so good that it's so true. I just don't believe in myself.
Yeah. And I don't know, but this has been a long introduction just to get to the.
Are we in the intro?
Kind of. We're just rip rapping here, but like the whole thing with having you on is that when Jesse knows my wife from when you knew who she was before she was even born, because you knew Duncan and Elizabeth when Elizabeth was pregnant, and Jesse was in Megan's dad's youth group growing up. And, you know, you've kind of you kind of carried on that legacy in a way. And in a way, I feel like I've earned some kind of favor with you that I didn't earn, but I've been given some favor.
Yes,
and like,
I have given you my favor.
You've given me favor.
The favor of my presence.
And that just because of the nepotism, I'm
spiritual nepotism.
Yeah, I get to sit down here and have this conversation with you. And when we first met, and you were just telling me stories about like when I was just asking you stuff like, how did Journey start and this and that?
Yeah.
And you were telling me all about it. And there was just so many points of connection in your story to my story, even though they were two different paths, a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same things, just in different ways. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused, is that they think that, oh, well, my problem's unique to me. And it's like, well, if you think that, then you're never going to get your problem solved, because you're always going to think that the world's against you because somehow you are more different or special than somebody else and your problem's different. But it's like, when you sit down and have these conversations and be vulnerable with someone, realize your journey to starting Journey and my journey to starting this podcast, they follow a lot of the same story arcs, even though they're completely different stories. But like, the themes are there. It's, what we ran into problems and we overcame problems, and everything looked bleak and it looked like it wasn't going to get there. And eventually it did. And what I find, and this is something that I believe not just men need, but women as well. 3 levels of accountability. You need a peer accountability. You need somebody just ahead of you. And this is at least one person. You can have multiple people, someone just ahead of you. So 10, 15 years down the line. And then you want to have some accountability from someone who's older, like a grandfather or grandmother aged person. And I have worked on trying to get all 3 of those things. And you have been that person who's just ahead of me, who I can look to and talk to about these issues. And even when you're vulnerable, sharing like the stuff that you're going through in that next 10 years for me, that 35 to 45 range that I'm going to be walking into soon. Geezer. That it's like, 33, I'll be 35 in a couple of years, and then I'm staring down the barrel of 40 before I even know it. But just kind of like looking at everything and going, man, okay, he got through it. I can get through it too. Like, I can find the commonality in our stories and be like, if he can get through that, then I can get through this, whatever that is. And
in a completely different lane.
A different lane, completely.
So do you think that that's a problem today, which Jordan Peterson, the OG, addresses? We've become so tribal.
Yes.
That we only connect with people that believe like us, experience life like us, think like us, that we fail to get across the aisle, so to speak, and find the value in what somebody else has. Because like you just said a few minutes ago, we got more in common than we do not. And like I've listened to, I'm a big comedy guy, as are you. Like, remember Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee? Yeah. Like, just hearing like these guys just get together and tell stories of how the adversity they went through. Like, ironically, it was like Patton Oswalt was just talking about like these days and there was just something that dude said that just made me go, as a pastor, like, man, I can keep going through what I'm experiencing. Or like, Kramer, shout out to Kramer, like, pre-racist rant, like the adversity.
Shout out to post-racist rant.
Because he's corrected.
He's loved too.
He's correcting, man. He is. But like, just seeing these people talk about adversity in a completely different area of life that I'm in. Yeah. Like I wish we would just see the importance of what you're talking about here. That's true community.
Yes. Yeah. Community is a big part of life in general. And like, but there are some things that do need to be done like on your own when it comes to like life and learning and growing. And I know that for my weight loss journey, especially, I never did it on my own. And that's why I was never successful, because I never developed all of the tools. I always relied on somebody else. And what I learned is with my health, it's a little bit different because I control what I put in my mouth. Like, at the end of the day, this is my last 3 feet of freedom right here. No one's going to force feed me. I'm going to feed myself. So this is my last 3 feet of freedom. It doesn't matter what I'm surrounded by. I still choose what I'm putting in my body.
Are your 3 feet your arm length?
Well, yeah, it's just a saying. I don't know how long my arm is.
I'd say those arms are probably two, maybe 3. Dude, maybe you got 3 feet arms.
I know that my wingspan is about 6'6", 6'7".
Oh, you are you're close to that.
My cousin Joel has monkey arms, and what I mean is,
he just scratch his knees without bending over.
I think he can He's the most unflexible person in the whole world. So it's weird because it's like his arms basically touch his knees and he still can't touch his toes. And I laugh about it.
He just sits there on the couch and he doesn't got to lean forward to grab the remote.
Yeah, he's got monkey arms. My brother's got long arms too.
Wow.
But
you
anyways,
got some long arms in your family.
Long arms.
Anyway, sorry, 3 feet. These are your 3 feet.
So this last 3 feet of freedom here, and when you're looking at that, I had to learn how to do all that for myself. I had to learn how to cook because I couldn't rely on my mom to keep making my meals. And I also didn't want to just keep microwaving lean cuisines because I'm like, this can't be healthy for me either. Because there's a difference between losing weight and being healthy. And you can lose weight and not be healthy, and you can be healthy and not lose weight.
Wow.
There's a lot of people who eat vegan that are fat and they'll tell you it's healthy. I don't necessarily think it is. And then there's
the organic sugars go in the vegan category.
Yeah.
Just dominating.
So I think, that you can get like vegan mayonnaise. French fries are vegan, depending on where you get
vegan
them from.
Anything today.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of like, we have all of these options available to us, and you have to choose what you put in your mouth. Just like we have all of this available to us in this world, and we can choose what we put into our lives and what we surround ourselves with. And one lesson that I have learned in a very hard way is that when I try to put things into my life that don't belong there, it starts to fall apart. And a lot of the time that's things that replace time that I should be spending with God or spending time at church or doing things that are good for my spirit because they benefit my body and my mind as well. And that's like the whole core of everything that I do is this mind, body, spirit triad of what I do for my mind is good for my body and my spirit. What I do for my body is good for my spirit and my mind, and learning how to balance all three of those things so that I'm working on, because we are spiritual beings, whether you believe in Christianity or not, there's something metaphysical to life, especially human beings. We're the only thing that has the level of consciousness that we understand, at least on this planet. And who knows, maybe there's a level of consciousness that we don't understand, but it's like, we are very special creatures. And part of that spirit, part of us is the community part of it, is like that there is this drive within us to need community. And when we lose that community, it affects our mental health and it affects our physical health. And when you're not working on your body, your spiritual health and your mental health, all these things start to fall apart. So like learning how to balance those things and finding a good group of people to talk to them about, and also just share what you're struggling with, have them share back and work on those things together. Like before Google, how did people figure things out?
The Encyclopedia Britannica that they'd come and sell at your house.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever buy that?
I don't know.
Are you serious?
No,
do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know about the door-to-door
That was what you had. That was the only way you knew.
We just didn't know.
Yeah, well, you guys were totally ignorant then.
Yeah, we were watching Saved by the Bell and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That was how we spent our time.
Yeah, not the new class. I'm talking the OG.
Yeah. Kelly Slater. What a stud.
Kelly Kapowski.
Wait, yeah.
Kelly Slater was a surfer.
That's right.
Champion.
What was Slater's first name?
AC Slater.
What did the AC?
The real question
Air
is
conditioning?
What did AC stand for? If anybody knows, can they please comment on this so we can find out without going to Google?
Didn't one of those guys pass away? I know Screech. It wasn't him. Screech, yeah. Dustin Diamond. Dude, I saw Mario.
What was Screech's real name?
Dustin Diamond?
No, I mean, I'm talking the character Screech.
Oh.
What was his real name?
Oh, I have no idea. I didn't know he had a name.
I believe, and when I say this, you'll go, oh yeah, I believe it was Samuel Powers.
Samuel Powers. That sounds like a name that
I believe it was Samuel Powers.
Something in my brain went, yeah, that's right.
I used to love, as did you, obviously, and so many others, that show.
Yeah, dude, Mr. Finkel or whatever his name was,
Belding.
Mr. Belding.
Come on, man,
dude. I'm getting stuff confused here. I started thinking of
Boy Meets World and stuff like that.
Yeah, what was What was the principal's name in Boy Meets World?
Mr. Feeney. But let me just say this. I didn't watch Boy Meets World because that was past my time. So I would have gotten.
Really?
So I'm ashamed to even admit that I know his name. But I'd get beat up if I told people I watched Boy Meets World because that was like a total kid show.
Really?
When I was in high school, that was like in elementary. That was
way.
what the little kids watched.
Dude,
I'd watch it every now and then, but that may be more because that was totally your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I do remember watching that show quite a bit. Richard Belding
is the principal of Bayside High School.
But Saved by the Bell,
respect the name. Put some spec on that name.
I saw the reason why I keep talking about this is because I was trying to get to this. I saw Mario Lopez the other day, and I could not believe how freaking good he looked. And I was like,
he did exactly back then.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, man, I'd love to talk to him about health. Like, how? What have you done non-surgically, non-injection? Like, what have you done to keep yourself healthy? Because that guy looks incredible at his age.
So good. Not only because he's got some Latino vibes. Shout out to my Latinos. Most people don't know my dad's Mexican, my mom's white. But I think there's obviously a lifestyle that guy is embracing that needs to be known.
Yeah. And when it's easy to look at him and be like, well, he's healthy, so I'm going to do exactly what he did and get healthy. But it just doesn't work that way.
No.
And it doesn't work that way with any aspect, mental health, spiritual health, physical health. You can't just copy and paste someone's plan of action to your life. You have to take in the information and disseminate it into something that works for you. And that's why that community is so big. And that's why I've really enjoyed sitting down and talking. And even when it comes to when we talk about health, there are things that I have to teach you, but then at the same time, we then talk about it and we try to figure it out within the context of your life. It's like, here's the big idea. Now, how do we take this template or this blueprint and make it work for Jesse? How can we make this work for somebody? Not just, well, here's what I did, so go ahead and copy it and do it. That's been the hardest part about doing what I do for a living is what I did worked for me, but me asking people to fast for 60 days, we did a week together about a month and a half ago.
Straight 7-day juice cleanse.
Yeah. So imagine doing that almost 10 more times straight. It's tough.
I'm angry thinking about it.
Sometimes I think about doing it again though, just because nothing's better than suffering.
I want to do it again. Not like today or next week, but
that's it. We're fasting.
Going. Oh God.
But sitting down and figuring out these issues has been a big part, what you've helped me with. And I did want to ask you about something in particular, because when we first sat down and talked, you were telling me about when you were trying to start the church and all these things that you were running into. And you shared some difficult stuff with me, but I did want to ask you, what has been something that you've gone through that when you were going through it, you're just this is the worst thing I've ever been through in my entire life. If you could think about something rough that you've been through, that you've made it through and you're on the other side of it, looking back, maybe you still think it was rough. Maybe you look at it and go, it wasn't that bad now that I've gone through other things, but in the moment, what was something you went through that you were just dude, this was the worst?
I think when I was on staff at a church, that was a really, at the time, big, large church that it was what you would call prosperity church. That was a really difficult time because I had kind of seen what things look like behind the scenes, and it was it wasn't what I thought it was. And I'm not trying to damage the integrity of the place of the people. I understand the temptations when machines get that big.
We'll go ahead and put the church's name in the in the podcast info so you can write hate mail to them.
It was just a clashing of worldviews almost, and it was just during that time where I really found a love for what I would call the people that nobody wants, the person that can't really give anything financially in the moment because they're just, like they have no value to add to the bottom line of an organization. Like they're just out there. They're alone. And like, I just wanted to go to like, I don't want anything from you. I want to give to you. Like that time period was really, really hard for me, but it was in that adversity. I heard somebody tell me as a mentor in my life that just said that the greater the grief, the greater the transformation. I hate that, but it's so true.
Yeah.
When he said it, I didn't even want to write it down because it's just, I hate adversity. I hate grieving, but that's often where we experience the greatest, change and transformation. And it was when that season of time serving at that church hurt so much, but so many good things came from that out of my life. And why is it that you need a pressure washer to, really clear the stain away and make things new? Why is it that a snake, in order to shed its skin, has to rub up against a really tough rock?
Yes.
Why can't the old skin just come off? Like, why do we need adversity to bring the best things out of us? But when I came out of that church, and that's where we started Journey from, like I came in with a set of core values that I would not have had if I didn't go through that adversity.
Yeah.
And I think I did a pretty poor job of explaining what my time was over there, because it's a tough thing to talk about, but nonetheless, like it's the prosperity gospel, health and wealth, and name it and claim it. It's a lie. And plain and simple, it's a lie. It's not that God doesn't want blessing for us, but it's not guaranteed how we want it the way we want it.
Yeah.
And who are we to demand God to do things for us? We just got to trust him and his route to bless us, which many times is through pain and adversity.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there's always blessing in and throughout it all. And so that was probably the hardest thing I went through, but it created the greatest thing that I could ever hope to have in the context of calling and purpose, which is Journey Church, and which has given birth to the Troy Dream Center, which is right now our community, our county's first, and right now only, I wish, and we pray that there's more to come, residential recovery home for men, a 16-bed facility where guys come free of charge just to find freedom. The guys that have crazy pasts, they come in with life-controlling issues of addiction. And there's so many stories. If you ever want to hear those stories, you can go to TroyDreamCenter.com and just click on the testimonies. Like, it's crazy the stories that come, and what we're able to do in Africa and around our communities, reaching, all that came from that point of adversity.
Yeah.
That season of adversity. So I'm thankful for it, which is weird. I would have never said that while I'm in it. Yeah. I'm thankful that I'm experiencing what perceivably feels like hell on earth. Thank you for this. You want to get out of it. It was like a wall, but I've been talking about this a lot lately with people. Like sometimes the wall is not something that the enemy made. Sometimes the wall is something God made for you. And we've got to eliminate this mindset of triumphalism, where it's like every obstacle in our life, every setback is enemy caused. And when we experience a wall, it's like, how can I get over this? How can I get through it? How can I get around it? Sometimes God created a wall because he wants to set you in it so that he can arrest your heart and start to do some things in it. And man, that was that 2 years of adversity for me.
Yeah. You're so
just got
right.
deep.
Yeah. Well, dude, adversity is like probably one of the biggest things. I'm glad you used that word. I might call it difficulties or something, but adversity is a good word for it. And I think a lot of the time we are so averse to adversity. We don't want any struggle. We don't want anything to be difficult. Well, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like if you could have everything you wanted and not have to work for it, then that'd be great. But like, it's like if you were writing out your life, You probably wouldn't write out like, and then Jesse had 2 years of getting kicked in the face in order to build a tough skin and find out what he wanted to do with his life. No, you wouldn't write that into your story.
Nobody's writing that.
Yeah, I wouldn't write into my story. And then Zach gained 130 pounds in, 6 months and went into a deep state of depression and started using drugs, and him and his wife grew apart. And like, I wouldn't write all that stuff into my story if I didn't have to, but I had to go through those things to even be sitting in this chair right now and being able to talk about things. Cause otherwise, where would I be? Like, still be 400 something pounds. I'd still be unhappy. I'd probably still be working a job that I didn't really like, but I was good at. So I stuck it out. And I would, if you don't have adversity, if you don't have pressure, if you don't have stress on your life, you're never going to develop. And I tell people this all the time, but I went to a winery one time and did a wine tasting, and I've only done it one time, but it was one of the coolest things I ever.
Is this like the Napa Valley?
Temecula. Temecula, California. And Temecula, California is like the Southern California version of Napa. So they have some really awesome wineries. And the particular one we went to, they stored their wine barrels in a cave, and we got to go into the cave. The cave was temperature controlled year round. So it was really cool. But they're
people
telling
love
us,
their wine.
They do. Wine's a really interesting thing. And wine people they're weird, but they're passionate. They're passionate people. And I like passionate people.
Yes.
So, because passionate people will talk your ear off, but you'll learn something if you pay attention. Just like with anything in life, if you pay attention, you're going to learn something. And I learned a valuable life lesson at this winery about stress. And they were telling this story about how they had a year where it didn't rain much and they didn't get a whole lot of water, and it was hotter than it had ever been, and it was windy, and it produced some of the best wine that winery had ever had.
Wow.
And it was one of their best selling wines. And scientifically, when the wind is blowing on these grapevines and when it gets hot, it forces those roots to dig deep. It forces that plant to work hard to keep that fruit healthy, because the plant doesn't understand that it's going to be making wine. The plant just knows that it wants to reproduce, and fruit is how it reproduces. So it does everything it can to keep that fruit healthy so that it can make it through to next harvest or next season, whatever. Right. Said harvest season, and reproduce and grow itself, replicate itself, become something different. And in that moment, it just like clicked. It was like, oh, we go through hard times to establish our roots. And before I moved out here, somebody came up to me at a Bible study and said, Zach. They didn't say my name. I'm saying Zach. They didn't know my name. I had never met this person before. They literally walked up to me.
Name tag. You don't know yet.
That's gosh, could you imagine how awkward that would be? All right, put on your name tags for Bible study. Somebody came up to me and they're like, I don't know you. Just God told me to come over here and tell you that you need to plant yourself in deep where you're headed, and that you need to be like a tent stake firmly planted in the ground because the storm is coming. And of course, I got out here and I didn't think much of it. And storms have come, and they continue to come in their own way. But like connecting those dots now, it's like, holy cow, man, were they right? Like I needed to root down. And if you don't have something good to root down in, or if you got shallow roots because you're just trying to get your hands on everything, well, you're going to die out.
Are you a palm tree guy?
I miss them.
I heard this about palm trees, so I hope that what I'm saying isn't found on Snopes. But like,
we're going to get Snoped with all.
It's after hurricanes, like especially down like in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast, is you see those video images of palm trees just like bending to the wind. Like somebody had measured those palm trees before one of those hurricanes came. I think it might have been Katrina. And then after the hurricane, and those palm trees were actually taller after the hurricane than they were before the hurricane.
Dang. Like significantly?
No, but like you're talking probably several inches. But to
That's
me,
pretty significant.
I don't know. I just found like what does that mean? Like, and if there's growth, like it's that initial. You're always looking for some way to motivate her. But if it's growth through adversity, I don't think nature could have produced a more beautiful illustration.
Absolutely.
Than like what you're saying.
Yeah, and this is where it gets hard because you want to tell people that, hey, all your hard work is going to mean something and hey, it's all going to balance out. But yeah, it will. But is that going to be tomorrow? Not really. Is that going to be next week? Probably not. Next year depends on what your goal is. With anything in life, everything in life that's worth having is worth working for. And it's not always going to be on the timeline that you want it to be. That's been something I really struggle with because I'm one of those people who you give me a task, I want to knock it out. And when I came out here, when I felt like I was called to come out to the Midwest, it was like, I'm trying to knock out this task and get it done. And you challenged me and you're like, hey, what if this isn't your task to finish? What if it's just your task to begin? And I was just like, dang. And I struggled with that for like 3 months where I was like, I don't know if I would want to keep walking in this path if I don't get to see some sort of conclusion. And until I started to admit that like, hey, regardless of what it is, I'm on assignment. And if I have been assigned something to do by someone that I respect and that I have submitted to, then, well, it doesn't matter as long as I keep working on the assignment and get it done, get my work done, at least, whatever it is. The problem is you don't really know when the work's done. You don't really even know sometimes if you're still working on it. It's just life.
That's part of the storm.
Yeah.
Too. And I use that palm tree analogy because of what you said that person said to you, like there's going to be storms. And it's just, I'm sure you can at least on the other side of you coming here to where you're at now, be able to measure yourself and see how much taller, your purpose is, how much stronger your determination is. I'm sure you can measure, or at least by some metric, begin to discern a lot of more proving strengths that you have and qualities and character. And
yeah, definitely. And like, just like with everything, it took you 2 years in a really rough spot to get whatever it was that you needed to come out here and do this. Cause this wasn't an easy task either for you. Like, I mean, how long has Journey been open? Is it 14 years or 15 years?
14 years a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Yes. So, I mean, I've been at Journey for 2.5 years or so. And like, I get to enjoy the fruits of the labor that everyone put in before me. Like, and I think if you forget where things came from, you often just take it for granted. And it's like, but because I've sat down with you and talked to you about all the crap that you went through in order to get this where it needed to be. And it's not like, okay, I arrived and now it's done. It's like, no. I've hit another checkpoint and we keep going. We keep pushing the envelope and we keep doing what we need to do to expand the vision that you were shown and that you've seen. And that's like that adversity. It's like, you have to continually give yourself adversity in order to keep the thing growing. And that's with anything in life. It's if you think that losing weight is going to be the end all be all for it, and once I lose the weight, I'll be good, then you've already lost.
Wow.
And the reason you've already lost is because weight loss is such a small part of health. And your weight loss period, whatever it is going to be such a short window comparatively to the rest of your life, unless you're trying to lose weight at like 90 years old, in which case you're just trying to squeak across the finish line. And more than likely, you don't need to lose weight at 90.
Right.
Because if you're living that long, let's be honest, you're probably not a chunker. I say all that to say you get to a certain point where when I'm looking at your story, when I'm looking at my story, and I see that it's just constant up and down and up and down and up and down. And if you're only riding for the high, well, what are you going to do when those lows happen? And you have to constantly be looking for those adverse positions to be in to get back up and to keep going. And I don't know. I've learned a lot about that from you and everything with your journey to get Journey where it's at. And it's been a privilege to be able to talk to you as often as I get to and experience what you're going through and what I've gone through and just kind of share those things and mesh them together. It's been fun.
Hey, you're welcome, son. Anything I can do. I think part of that is again, full circling back here to this moment of just being vulnerable to the losses we experience inside of those adverse seasons. Nobody pushes through adversity perfectly. It's a series of wins and losses. I imagine you're a Cardinals fan.
I try to be.
Padres? Are you more Padres? Or are you just, you know what? I got an open relationship with baseball. Is that you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know it. I liked baseball when everyone was on the sauce. I liked it when
McGuire's forearms looked like your thighs.
Yeah. McGuire, when they were all juiced.
Dude,
I cried.
Gills. I cried when he hit the 60-second home run in 1998, I believe it was. I was in Columbus, Ohio in college.
Is that when it was?
And I cried my eyes out.
Because
I'm a born Cardinals fan. I grew up 5 minutes from Busch Stadium. So anyway.
Yeah.
But that 2011 miracle season where, we won the World Series, which, by the way, the St. Louis Cardinals, let's just say it, second most winningest franchise in baseball history.
I think that was the year that the Padres were having a great season and they knocked the Padres out.
Man, I'm sorry. Nonetheless,
I don't really care.
We're in the World Series, right? David Freese, clinker, bottom of the ninth, whatever, goes the 11th, he hits it again. But that season, if you look at that season, we weren't even projected to make the playoffs in August. Like, there were so many L's on that record. And I never noticed this before until I went and spoke at a women's prison in Vandalia through a great ministry that we partner with called Beauty for Ashes then that was over there. And we went in there and we ended up talking to like 1,600 of the ladies there that were incarcerated. And I was sitting over there going like, how do I get this message of overcoming adversity to people that are literally living in the definition of adversity? And I look over in this gymnasium and I see this Cardinals. This was in 2012. Or no, it was 2011. And we had just won the World Series. And I looked and they had the whole season, like every game, like in this big calendar that you could do like a magic marker. And so it was just they won in April. They lost on April 16th. They lost on April 17th. They won on April 19th. So yeah. I looked at that thing and I was like, look at all the L's on this calendar.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think we think about the journey to the trophy, the journey to the accomplishment includes a lot of losses. And it's what we do with those losses that determines how we keep going. To quote, Conor McGregor, right? When he lost, McGregor, he said, he said something so cool. He goes, "I don't lose, I learn."
Dude.
And I was like, come on.
I thought I was about to say something kind of crafty, and you almost touched on it there, almost verbatim of what I was going to say. When you can look at those L's when you chalk them up, and you can, without context, those L's just become losses, but really they're lessons. Each one of those L's are lessons.
I like yours better.
Lessons, not losses.
That's good.
And I think that if you're always looking at something as like it's a binary of it's a win or a lose, it's a zero-sum game, essentially, that there has to be a clear winning outcome of whatever it is. Well, you're going to go around life feeling like you're a loser. The best players in baseball only get a hit 3 out of 10 times. They lose about that. They lose 70% of the time.
Wow.
A good team in baseball gets 100 wins That's
team.
Like an incredible team.
That's like 160 game season. That's crazy.
I remember baseball used to be 162 or 164 games. It might be more than that now.
Let me text Daryl and ask him.
Yeah. Hey, Daryl.
Shout out to the straw man.
Yeah.
But I think it's 160 games.
Yeah. And all that to say that like these L's, these lessons, these losses, however you want to look at it, they're only losses if you don't look at them and try to learn something from them, and you don't try to rebound and do something with it. And how many times did I lose weight and gain it back? Every time except once. Every time but once. That means I lost every other time except once.
Wow.
And when if I'm looking at it as a loss instead of an attempt or a lesson, then I'm not where I'm at now. But I took the conglomeration of everything that I had put together in those losses and said, all right, I'm going to put together one championship season here. I've got everything I need now and all the pieces in place to do this. And I'm sure that there's been things like that with you in your life where you struggle with something, and then it's like, okay, it clicks. And I don't know if there's anything that's jumping to the top of your head, but I know that for me specifically, it's really easy for me to go to the weight, but it's not just that. It's all the times that I get in a fight with Megan about something, and eventually we don't fight about it anymore because we learn to communicate about it the correct way. And it's like all those disagreements, all those fights, all those arguments can end the marriage, or they can be lessons that we learn so that our marriage gets better and moves forward. So it's not just weight loss. It's our marriage with God. It's all the times that I sit down and read my Bible and I'm looking for an answer rather than just looking for a relationship and trying to learn something. And I'm just looking for what verse I need to hear to get me through the day versus, no, I'm trying to sit down and genuinely get to know God a little bit. So it's like all those three aspects, all those different examples, it all lends to that idea of losing's part of the game. And it's the most important part of the game.
And life-changing things happen in those like bottom of the barrel moments, which these baseball analogies in this adversity, I have to shout out Daryl's book, Turn Your Season Around. I mean, he literally, Daryl Strawberry has a life that emulates that. So you can buy that book on Amazon or just Google it and get it. It's a really great book.
Once I get a few more of these under my belt, I'm going to talk to him and Tracy and see if I can get Daryl to come on here.
They are the best people to hang out with. You want to talk
about someone who's got a turn it around story.
And so that book emulates his whole story.
Yeah.
But, thinking about how like there's so much opportunity for hope packed into the worst of things. And I think about myself, like I was 13. I didn't grow up in church like you did. Yeah. I grew up completely wayward. So by the time I'm 13, I'd been arrested for the second time. And, I found myself in the court system in 1991 as a 13-year-old kid here in Lincoln County. And, the judge looked at me and said, and judges aren't supposed to tell you to go to church. It's against the whole, separation of church and state thing. But he did look at me and goes, it might not be a bad idea because I'd just gotten out of St. Charles County Delinquent Center that my mother and father were like teaming with the judge, put him in there. Yeah. Let him get a taste of this life that he's heading to. He goes, it might not be a bad idea if you checked out a faith community. And so
faith community,
I love how they worded it.
Yeah.
But, teamed with like my mother, obviously, who was part of a faith community. And I think they knew that. Like, that's what introduced me to your wife's family and her parents, who were youth pastors, and they connected with me. But it really started in the court system. And so that was 1991. Fast forward to just literally 4 days ago. I'm invited by Judge Patrick Flynn, who's one of our presiding judge out here. He's retired this year. And he wanted me to come because he loves the Troy Dream Center and loves what we're doing in the community. he wanted me to come and do the benediction. And so I'm in our courts here in Lincoln County at the Justice Center, and the place is packed full of the who's who of, our local legislators. Even some of our state legislators are there represented. And it hit me that Judge Flynn started being a judge in 1991.
Wait. Was he the one?
Right. So I don't remember. It's not, I'm 13.
Are we getting
I'm
to
a punk kid. No, I don't.
Oh.
I honestly don't know.
Wait,
But
you didn't ask him? Hey, are you the judge that told me to go to church?
Well, to ask a guy who's adjudicated thousands of cases. Hey, do you remember me in 1991 when you first started? But nonetheless,
Yeah, you're the guy I told should go see something about faith. I don't know.
I've talked with a couple of people about this, and I think it was Pat Flynn that was that judge. But it is just weird that it hit me in that moment. Like, I'm here honoring a judge who's honoring me for his retirement, or is honoring me to let him honor him for his retirement. And I literally said to the courts in that moment, I go, my journey to where I am today began in the courts. And I kind of shared that story, but it was like that low point adversity that I was experiencing, deservedly, because that was based off the wings of my own consequences. But it's still, there's hope. Even when the wall that's in front of you is self-created, there's still hope. Like the author of life, right? I call it God with his son Christ, and or however you want. There's so much opportunity for victory in every situation, to where that led me to this weird full circle moment where today I'm a pastor and I'm helping people in this way. And I get to honor the judge who was part of my life's correction way back in the day. Like, I love how God works. I love how it all just comes together. If you would just see adversity for something that it's not. Adversity isn't meant to decimate you. It's meant to develop you.
Yes.
And development, I don't know if we talk about this as much as we should about growth. Growth hurts.
Yes.
Like, growing is painful. Developing carries so much. Ugh.
Yes.
Anyway.
Growing pain. I mean, why do you have growing pains? Like, it's because it's touching a nerve. It's getting close to something that means something to you. And
yes,
like, it wouldn't bother you. There would be no reason to grow if it didn't bother you. Like, that's just what it is. And I just really want to challenge people to, like, and this isn't like I'm challenging you right now to do this. It's just more of like, when I talk to people, I like to ask them questions.
Yeah.
And it's not to challenge them. I want you to talk about why you're actually saying, like, why do you believe what you believe? Like, why do you think that? And I ask questions in a certain way to get to that, because I think a lot of the time we just accept where we're at as like, oh, this is just the way it is, because you don't want something to be hard, because if it's hard, then
it's good.
But like, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think that's just part of it. And the reason it gets worse is because it's that learning curve. It's trying to figure things out, but things often get worse before they get better. And you said something that made me think of this earlier, and I probably said this before to people, but Tony Evans is a pastor, and he said this thing one time, you got to dig deep if you want to build high.
It's a killer impression.
You got to dig deep. And it didn't mean much to me. But I work in construction at a period in my life that I look back at and go, oh, it's like the footings. You got to dig the footings. And if you're doing a 1-story house, you might have 18-inch footings. But if you're doing a 2-story house, you might have 24 to 36-inch footings. And the higher you want to go in that house, you got to dig deeper into the bedrock. And it's that digging deep part before you can build yourself up. You got to tear the ground out. You got to dig the dirt out. You got to flip it. You got to get everything in place so that then you have a good foundation to build off of. And adversity really is just, it's laying the foundation a lot of the time. And then as you're going in, as you continue to encounter adversity in your life, it's part of the remodel process, I guess you could say. And
if you want to go fast, go alone.
Yeah.
But if you want to go far, go together. Right?
Yeah.
I forget whoever said that.
It's a good one.
I love that quote though. That Tony Evans voice almost saying that.
Tony Evans. I like Tony Evans. I used to, when I first came to have my own relationship with God, I used to listen to a few pastors on a regular basis. Tony Evans, Mark Driscoll, those were a couple of them. But I'd listen to Tony Evans in the morning, and Megan would always make fun of it. She'd put on, "What you listening to this morning?" What did God tell you?
Who's your? I know Driscoll's still with you now. I
still listen to Driscoll. Honestly, I've tried to really narrow down that pool because
that's good.
This is also part of it. And this is also, I think, a big reason why people are so confused and can't figure out what the hell to do with their lives, is because they're listening to too many freaking people.
Too many voices.
Like, I would rather you not listen to me if it meant that you could listen to someone else who's going to help you in a better area of your life and focus on one area. We're going to talk about a lot of things on this podcast, but like, in all reality, if you're taking in all these different voices and all these different opinions on all these different subjects, you're going to get confused. Because even if I listen to you and then I listen to another pastor and I'm being pastored by all these different people, just like with weight loss advice, if I have a coach who's telling me to do keto and I have another coach who's telling me to do, high carb, and I have another coach who's telling me to do fasting and another one who's telling me you got to eat vegan. Well, you've seen that reel that's going around where it's like the guy who's like, all right, well, I want to eat healthy, so I'll have some chicken breasts. And then it's like the cuts to the person. It's like, well, chicken's not healthy for you anymore. And
please
it's like,
send this to me. I haven't seen it.
Oh,
yes.
Well, I guess I'll make some eggs. Well, eggs aren't healthy for you. Well, I guess we'll just have water. Well, water could have poison in it. And it's like the whole idea of, you have all these different opinions coming in. So I had to narrow down.
That's good.
And really, I listen to you, and I listen to Mark Driscoll only because he does a lot of stuff about men. So it's less about, it's more of how to be a godly man. And I listen to his podcast about that because I do think he really crushes it when it comes to calling men to be men, and that you're not a sackless man. There's no better way to put it if you follow God, because for the longest time, I always thought, if I follow God, I'm going to be boring. If I follow God, I'm going to be some beta male.
Erase the adventure.
Yeah, like I'm going to be some beta male who wears cargo shorts and a polo tucked into it. Like that's what I imagine the
Which is
typical.
Coming back, by the way.
It is. I won't do it. I will wear.
He says that. Dude.
Look, when I was fat, I could not wear any of the clothes I wanted.
There was no tuck.
Dude. Just I wore what was available to me, not what I wanted. And I think that when you're not in a place in life, you just take what's given to you rather than what you want. And that was what I was.
Then wear the cargo shorts with the tucked in collared shirt, bro.
Now I'm wearing, these short shorts where I wear as plain of clothes as possible. Have you ever seen me wear something with a logo?
No.
Other than a hat?
I swear I was going to say.
I have a shirt that I wore the other day. I thought about wearing it today. It says Ben Dover 2024. It's like a fake campaign shirt.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. That one gets a lot of looks in Troy.
But yeah, that definition of a man.
Yeah.
You were saying you
I listen to him because of that, and I find that good. But really, as I've entered into this mentor relationship and submitted to myself under you, I have decided that means I need to listen to your voice, and it's okay to go and listen to other people. Like when we were discussing the baptism of the Holy Spirit, we brainstormed, and then we kind of went off, and then we came back together a few weeks later. And in that period of time, I did probably 10, 20 hours of research.
Dominated.
But like I listened to a sermon by a pastor that I remember down in Springfield, Missouri area, John Lindell.
Yeah, James River.
And because I know that I know he was legit. And that's another hard thing is like, I don't know who's a charlatan.
Trusting
not
voices.
anymore. Yeah. So until I've built up enough of a rapport with somebody and seen enough of what they do, that's when I can figure it out. And just the smaller that group is, the stronger it is.
That's why. Do you think that too many voices is almost attributed to that? You call it analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
People that overthink, like when you have too much in the tank, it does become paralyzing. And I get sad when I see that people start to overconsume instead of, just underproducing. And
yeah, you can't consume and produce at the same time.
Like that reel that you're going to send me.
Yes, I will
the
find
guy with
it.
the chicken, like the guy's thinking so much.
Yeah.
Which is I know a joke on a real thing though. It's like, well, I'm just not going to.
I'll find that. That'll be good for a sermon one day, maybe for you.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
I will find that. And like,
I'm with you. I only listen to about maybe one or two different guys, and it's not every week. I really have to allow those voices in my life to be just more mainstream, just one or two people.
Yeah. And like in all reality, my ADHD borders on autism. I will listen to the same crap over and over and over again. So like I listen to a lot of books on books on tape. How is that so stuck in my head that I still call it books on tape? Audible. I listen to Audible quite often, and I will listen to the same books over and over again.
Shout out to cassette tapes.
Yeah. we should bring back the cassette tapes.
I will.
But yeah, I will listen to the same books over and over again, like 12 Rules for Life and 12 Rules for Life Antidote for Chaos and Don't Let the Enemy Have a Seat at Your Table and Never Finished and Can't Hurt Me. I'll listen to these books over and over again because it's just like with those lessons. It's like when you're going through something else in life, it's going to stand out differently. I got saved off of Genesis 1:1. No one. I know there was no call to church. I was sitting in my car alone.
What was it about? In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth.
I've never told this story to anybody really in this sort of format. So I will tell you. I was working at the law firm. I was going through a divorce, and I would smoke weed all day. And you're like, well, how could you work at a law firm and manage a personal injury department stone? And it's like, dude, I function very well. And so I went out to my car to go get high again, so that I could go back in and bust out another 2 hours of work before I needed to go get high again. So about every 2 hours, I go out to my car and smoke and then go back in. And before Megan and I like kind of started this divorce procedure thing, it was right around Christmas time. It was December. And I had just ordered in some stuff off of Amazon, like a basketball and a few things. And there must have been this in my cart on Amazon. I didn't even know, but there was an ESV Bible. So I open up this Amazon box in my car while I'm going in my car to go get stoned. And I see this ESV Bible in there. And I decided to just open it up and see like, all right, let's see if this thing changed at all. Now, granted, I had taken my last Bible, tore it in half and threw it in the trash can, gave it the finger.
Did you really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Because I was that fed up with God at the time.
Done.
Yeah, I was done. And I open it up to Genesis 1:1 because I'm like, I'm pretty sure I know that verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was out for him. And
that's verse 2, but yeah.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
There you go.
And in that moment, something spoke to me, which I believe to be God. And that voice said, I took the time to create everything that you can see, everything that you perceive.
You're feeling this. You feel like you're hearing this.
And I care about you specifically. And that broke me. And I'm bawling in my car, like absolutely crying in my car. And I'm just sitting there going like, how big everything is. And I have meaning, like me personally. And I even get a little choked up, like talking about it right now. Cause it's,
wow.
I think so many people don't think that their life has meaning. They're borderline nihilistic. And I was there too. And if you don't believe that you have meaning, well, why would you take care of yourself? Why would you do anything for you? Like, why would you try to lose weight? Why would you try to fix your relationship with people that hurt you? Why would you set boundaries?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do things to make yourself healthy? If you don't love yourself, why would you want anyone else to love you? Why would you expect anybody else to love you?
Wow.
That hit me. And like all that in a matter of like milliseconds poured into my head, like all those thoughts. And at that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. So I called my youth pastor from high school, who was the only person in my phone who I knew I could call in that moment, Troy Lehman.
Shout out Troy Lehman.
Troy Lehman at the Gathering. He was my pastor at the Gathering, but he's an associate pastor, I think, now at Shadow Mountain Church in San Diego. And he kind of talked me through it, and he offered to baptize me. I got baptized a few weeks later. And,
Wow.
Since then, like it hasn't been all great. You've seen me struggle with this stuff. I sat down in your office like probably 6 months to a year ago, and I'm like, dude, I don't know if God's real, because there are times where I couldn't hear, I couldn't feel, and I struggled with it. And like, I'm sure it's been like that with you too at certain things, but
For sure.
and I'd love to have you expand on that some, but it's just like that was that story for me of like, that was a life-changing moment. And that's why I tell people, like, there's something deeply spiritual about the human experience, and to deny that there's a spiritual component to our existence, I think you're I think you're only robbing yourself, because those thoughts that occurred in my mind were not something of me. I mean, I was going out to get high. Like I was literally going to my car to go get stoned and go back to work. And that happened. Like, you think I'm just going to, this is a good time to give myself to the Lord. I was already still a little bit high. Like I was just going
the intention of the moment.
No, I was just going to top off before, I got done with a really stressful phone call. I'm going to go top off.
Wow.
So you want to tell me that was just me? That was just my subconscious? Go for it. I don't believe you, but like that, those are those moments that I cling to when I'm in those low points, and I have to dig my roots in deep, as I have to look back at that and go, you have purpose, you have meaning, your life matters. And sometimes I have to do that multiple times a day.
Yeah, you got to find that for yourself. And I love it that it was in a car just by yourself, that you found that for yourself. And sometimes that's what did somebody say? That rock bottom is the best foundation to rebuild from or to build off of. And like, you wouldn't give that painful experience back for anything in the world, because it ended up becoming this whole new rebuild for your life.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have otherwise happened, that we would know. And so why gamble to say, it would have if he didn't? But so I love that. I
wouldn't wish it on anybody though, but it's like, hey, it's required.
No, it's required. I hate that. We hate that, but it's so true. Like when I was at that church on staff in a really tough season, like I found, because I didn't grow up in church. So like I didn't start going to church till I was 15.
Pause real quick.
Yeah.
So that was a very big church, and I don't want to talk about, what state or city or even names or anything, but like maybe you can about the one before, but like, what was the biggest church that you had served at prior to being at this church? Because this church that you went to,
a couple hundred people.
So you went from a couple hundred to over 5 figures of people, over 10,000 people.
Yeah,
at the church.
like if you stacked all the pews side by side, it was 2.7 miles. It was a big auditorium. I think it was 5,200 seats.
So that's a vastly different experience.
Game-changing of an experience.
Okay.
And I love big churches. Like I've had the opportunity to be in some amazing big churches.
Okay.
There are so many healthy, like you talked about, like there's some people that are doing it legit. But like for me, like when you, and this could have happened to anybody. But I didn't grow up in church. So when I start going to church, it was a lot of Like, don't ask, just do. If I had a question about God, if I had a question about the Bible that just didn't make sense to me right off the bat, or how things were being done, I just didn't know. So I was genuinely asking. But at the same time, people were just, because I said so in it and because God said so in it, and don't question. Question equals doubting, and doubting is never good. And so I always suppress those thoughts. And so when I get to that place where that mentality, your faith in God is put primarily in what preachers are telling you, because you're not supposed to question. It's what they say goes. So then almost they become like this version of divinity in a way. It's not that they are, but you treat them as sacred, and what they say you don't question. So they're kind of part of your faith connection, which is not supposed to be put in men. It's supposed to be put in God. And what I mean that is this individual spiritual experience that you get to have with the one who made you. But I had my faith in God based through what people would say, and I wasn't allowed to question. I didn't know how to find anything out for myself.
Yeah.
So when I started experiencing a pastor who I struggled with seeing, like, that connection and character, like, I was treated pretty messed up. Like, I was like, well, then when my faith in that person went down, so kind of went my faith in God, because my faith was always put in what pastors are supposed to tell me. And so I was just like, is this even real? So I'm preaching in this place going, God, I don't even know if I believe what I'm saying. Like, I'm struggling. How do I know there's a God? First off, my only answer to that is
this is something that while you're a pastor at this church, you're
I'm
struggling with these questions.
Thoughts.
Yeah.
How do I know? I believe there is, because I just don't think this stuff is accident. Like,
yeah.
But how do I know? And to go even more sub-level of that, how do I know that Jesus is the Son of God? And how do I know that he really lived, died? And here's the bigger question. How do I know that he really resurrected? I think the vast majority of Christians that could even answer that question are, well, the Bible says that he did, or I have faith that he did. And that was my answer.
Yeah.
How do I know this Bible is telling the truth? How do I know that it's not just a accurate copy of a lie? How do I know that it's...
Yeah.
So I didn't have any of those answers outside of, I just have faith that they do. And to me, that wasn't enough. And so I kind of went away from that. What I did with that tension is I took it to like just a season, about a year and a half of just absolute apologetic study, and started digging into not just what the yay-sayers are saying about Jesus. What are the naysayers throughout history say about Jesus, about God? What is science? I started digging into all of it, and I realized, man, there's proof to all this stuff. There's proof to the existence of God. There's proof to the existence of the resurrection of Jesus. It's not just because it says it in the Bible. And I believe the Bible. But if you don't believe the Bible, then you're not going to believe anything else that we're saying. And so there's proof that the Bible is accurate, that it's God's word. So when I took that journey, it was kind of like my version of you in the car with Genesis 1:1. It was like, wow, like there is a God. He did send his son for me. He did die. He did rise again. And I do have salvation through him, as this book that I believe is accurate now and truthful and infallible and inerrant and inspired is. And I just found myself in that season of life, just finding faith in an amazing new way. And then that launched, again, a desire to help others that share. And so that's been a big part of Journey. Every couple of years, I do a series of talks on how do you know? And we've had people that were like, we had a guy when I first did it. He was the head of the science department for Troy High School, atheist. And he said, hey, he literally told me when we're getting ready, because I'm getting ready to do a series, like, I'm going to prove that there's a God. I'm going to prove all this stuff. I'm going to prove how science and the Bible hold hands. And he literally goes, "Hey, I'm the head of science department, Troy. I'm an atheist. Look forward to your series today." And I'm going, "All right." I wasn't
Let's
nervous,
go.
but most people would think I should be. But it's like, no, I have so much confidence in it.
Oof,
He
dude.
he gave his life to Christ in that series, and
That's incredible.
like, and to this day is a believer, and they've since moved to Oklahoma, and just they're amazing couple. He's part of our military, ended up leaving science and found a whole new passion, and just
Wow.
really cool things. But that all started again, kind of full circling back to this dark season of adversity. So many great things were born from that. And I love that's your story too. That rock bottom has built the most amazing house that I could live in.
Yeah. And like, let's be honest, even though that might have been the rock bottom, I know from sitting down and talking to you that still wasn't like the end of low points, because I've
No.
heard the Lay's potato chip story. And like,
yeah.
dude,
It's a
that
series
story,
of storms. Yeah.
that story hurts me, because like that story, I can vibe with that recently in my life, where I'm just like, what the F am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, is this really what you called me to do, God? Like, I'm doing this right now.
So good.
And
Yeah.
like, that's your story. And maybe we can save that one for another podcast and
Lay's potato
and
chips.
do that. But,
On the next Untitled.
yeah, I know that I really struggled to openly talk about this stuff. Like, I'm vulnerable with all these areas of my life. I'll tell you about my loose skin. I'll tell you about my insecurities. I'll tell you about all the things that I struggle with, but I always had a really hard time talking about God and talking about faith and how it interweaves with everything. And I'm just very thankful for the relationship that I have with you, because it's gotten me to a point where I am more confident to talk about it, because I'm not so caught up in all the little things that I was caught up in, or as much caught up in them anymore, like all the religious side of things. And I learned that, hey, I can screw up, and
That's good.
it's like, but my aim has to be true. Like,
Yes.
I can miss the target, but I have to be aiming at it. Like, I can't just turn around and shoot at something else. I think a lot of people have a misconception of what having a relationship with God, specifically, the Judeo-Christian God, Jesus, like Yahweh, however you want to refer to him, any of his many names from the Bible, but like the God of the Bible. Because and I say we, the big church, the for 2,000 years of people who have followed in the teachings of Christ, like, have added so much to what is required to live a spiritual life, like to live a faith-filled life. And it turns so many people away, just like all the things you have to do to be healthy. Like, oh, you got to exercise, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's like, well, God's just asking you to make one decision. Can you just follow me? And it's like, okay, so can you just make one decision? Can you just agree that you want to get healthy?
Yeah.
And then once you make that decision, you're going to start to see things in your life that aren't healthy. And you're going to say, okay, I should probably focus on changing that thing. And that's how it all ties in. And like, I just feel more free to talk about it and be open about it, because I do think that if you neglect that part of your life, the other areas are like, yeah, they might look good, but they're going to be hollow. And I just appreciate how vulnerable you've been today, sharing what you've shared. And I'm really looking forward to doing it again. But, I'm looking at time.
Yeah.
I've taken up quite a bit of your time. Is there anything you want to add to this before we finish up?
I think to summarize what we're talking about in the immortal words of David Goggins, stay hard.
Stay hard.
In your discipline and your persistence, but make sure your heart is soft. Always keep that vulnerable. Always keep that, absolutely moldable. and letting others in to help.
You're just going to drop that steaming pile of food
Bro.
for us right now, and we can't eat it?
Bro, we're just going to set that here and just let that simmer.
Till next time. Thank you all for joining us here. Just remember the biggest thing: to live untitled and not entitled. Work, get after it, and just remember that you have purpose. This is going to be weird, like looking at this camera right now and speaking to you, but I promise you, you do have purpose. And if you're not sure what it is, get yourself around some people and start talking. Find one person. And if you can't find one person, go pay someone. Go pay a therapist. I paid 2 therapists to talk to me and help me figure out these problems. And then I have other people that I talk to. So I love you all. Have a great day, week, night, whatever it is. Talk to you soon.